I know the importance of it. I could rather skip a day before I have to take 2 weeks off. One run is never as important as 2 weeks of training. If you are in a position to do something really difficult, you should never say no to it. Challenge yourself. That's what keeps the human race alive, and that's what keeps us evolving, and that's what inspires others. I'm never allowed to start at a point higher than where I finish my training. The start point and the finish point need to be at the same point. So I can never do an overall downhill run. You don't have to follow what the experts say, or you don't have to follow what other people think you should do. Find your own way, find your own passion, and make the most of that.
Welcome back to 5 Miles Easy. Today we are so excited to be joined by one of South Africa's true running stars, Gerda Steyn. Gerda is a true force in the world of endurance sport, and her story is nothing short of extraordinary. Starting her running career later in life after working in the corporate world, Gerda has become one of the most accomplished athletes in South Africa. Gerda has had 3 victories at the Comrades Marathon, breaking both the up and down course records, alongside having won 2 Oceans 5 times, also holding the record there. An Olympian twice in the marathon. Gerda truly is a national hero here in South Africa.
Steph, I'm so excited for this episode. Gerda is just first of all, a wonderful person. Mm-hmm. She always has a smile on her face. You can tell she just loves running, and her energy is so infectious. But she's just an incredible athlete. I don't know how she is. I mean, first of all, she came to it so late, and she's so good at the endurance stuff, but then also really good at marathon, very fast. So I'm really interested to dive into that, dive into her training philosophies, her mindset, and how she recovers. Because last year she won 2 Oceans.
Yeah.
She won Comrades and broke her own record.
Mm-hmm.
Then, so that was June. 2 Oceans was April, Comrades June. Then she went to the Paris Olympics.
Yeah.
And then turned around for Valencia Marathon.
Yeah.
And I know it wasn't quite her day, but I think she was going for the South African record, and she had a few stomach issues, which was really unfortunate. But to recover and turn around for that and be in good shape is just incredible. So I really want to learn about how she does all that, especially without, years and years and years of running background.
Yeah,
but
and peaking for them, it's not like she used 2 Oceans as like, oh, I'll just take it easy for this, so then I put it all on Comrades. Like, she went hard at 2 Oceans, hard at like, she's gone hard every single time. So it is like, I don't know how her body does it, but it's amazing to watch. And when you see the pace that she's able to hold with all those hills over that amount of time, it's absolutely incredible.
It is mind-blowing. I think Comrades just blows my mind. And actually, we should probably say, because I'm sure we'll be talking about it, for people who don't know what it is, Comrades is like the pinnacle of South African running.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to get Gerda's view on this, but I think it's bigger than the Olympics for South Africa. It's like such a big deal in the running world, isn't it? Yeah,
it's huge.
But it's 87 kilometers, brutal elevation. I actually don't know what the elevation is, but it's a lot.
Yeah, and each year it changes direction. So you have what they call the up run and the down run. Both are very hilly, but the down run just has you start higher and lower. So it has more down, and then the other way for the up. Yeah. But I think the difference in her times isn't huge. Like, the up's slightly slower, but it's only by like 10 minutes or something. So actually you do.
That doesn't actually surprise me, because that much downhill must be brutal on your quads.
Yes. So I hear like the down, you run faster, but the recovery afterwards is so much worse than after the up.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the cramp.
Oh God, I know.
Anyway, I'm sure we will hear lots about Comrades from Gerda, so shall we get her on the show?
Let's do it.
We have a quick favour to ask you. Each week, we want to make this podcast better and better. But to do that, we need your help. If you're watching on YouTube, could you spare us 1 second and click that subscribe button? And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, please follow us and rate the show. It will really, really help us to keep bringing you these conversations each week, to get you out on those runs and help you hit your running goals.
Thank you.
Gerda, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to chat to you and just dive into everything about your journey, because it's honestly incredible. And being out here in South Africa with you, you're literally a national hero. Like, it's amazing. You run along and you're a celebrity. And we can totally understand why, because you've just achieved incredible things. But our first question, which we ask all our guests, is what is your why for running?
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I know it's been coming a while, so to finally sit down with you both is a real pleasure. I listen to your show all the time, so it's a pleasure to be a guest today. To come back to the question, my why for running, I think has always been the same from the start. It's purely, I just love running. When I run, I feel like I belong, and when I run, I feel like I'm doing what I'm born to do.
I love that. Yeah, that's so nice. And how long have you actually been running for? Because I know your running career started relatively late, but did you run before you discovered you had the real talent for it?
I started running quite late. I was 24 when I started running. Before that, I knew I liked running. It's not like I've never run a step in my life before that. But growing up through school, through university, there was never any sign that I had a talent for running. I did a little bit of running with a friend in university. We used to run around the campus, and I remember so well, she had a sports watch, a GPS watch, so her watch tracked how far we could run, how far we were running. So it was always enjoyable to run with her because we knew how far we were going. But it was literally just the odd 4-5K every other day. Nothing, no aspirations to go any further or do any more. It was just one of the things that I enjoyed doing. So yeah, it started really late in my life, but I don't regret that. I feel like I'm still it's been now more than 10 years, or about 10 years, but I still feel like I'm quite new, which brings that fresh energy. So I don't actually regret not running when I was a kid.
So how did you discover it?
So in 2014, I moved to Dubai. I just got a job opportunity there. I was a quantity surveyor at the time, and I grabbed it with both hands. I thought, wow, what an experience. I'll go and live abroad and see what it's like for a little bit to live the expat life. And when I arrived there, I literally knew no one. So I thought I'd join a running club to make some friends or to just meet some people, because like I said earlier, I knew I enjoyed running, but even before I went there, I've never joined a running club or a running group, even in South Africa. So I decided one good evening I'll join the local running club in Dubai, and that's where it all started. I met a wonderful group of people even on that first night, which my husband was one of, actually, and they were all obsessed with Comrades. They couldn't believe, or they were very surprised to hear I'm from South Africa, and then the fact I wasn't interested in running Comrades, or for them it was almost strange, because they were just in love with the race, and they were at the time actually training for a marathon in order to qualify for the Comrades. So I just got sucked into that, I think, and I really immediately felt a little bit at home, I guess, and something from abroad brought me back home, and I just got into the group. I started running with them, and from there the improvement was so rapid. So for the first time in my life, I was training a bit structured, actually training for a goal, because they convinced me it wasn't very hard, but they convinced me to run the marathon with them in a couple of months' time, and I just loved it, and I improved really, really quickly. The moment I started doing a bit of structured interval workouts, I could really almost see, not week on week, but so rapid improvement. And that's how it all started. So it went from one thing to the next. I ran a marathon. I then immediately signed up for the Comrades, ran really well, wanted to improve, and it just went on from there. So it's a bit of a different story and a different start to it, but such an incredible past 10 years of running. It literally changed my entire life, my entire lifestyle, my job, my everything. So really, really grateful for how it all played out.
Yeah, it's so cool. And Rose and I were talking about how big Comrades is here, and like almost like it's bigger than the Olympics here. It's just so big. So you said you had rapid improvement. What was the turning point where you decided, okay, I'm going to quit my corporate job and pursue this full time?
It came to a point where I knew, well, I still kept on improving, and I knew it wasn't really, not going to go any further if I didn't allow myself more free time. My job that I had at the time was really full on. It was intense. There was no room for a big side hustle, if I can put it in those words. It was very time consuming, and I knew that it wasn't going to really work for much longer because it would just become too much. I wanted to go on training camps. I wanted to have time off to go to the races and experience it in full. So that sort of decision wasn't difficult. I knew I really, really wanted to do it. But the difficult part was knowing whether I'll be able to make a success out of the running, because at the time, I can admit, I wasn't very good on the world level, on a world class level. I was just improving, but I can't say I was at a professional level just yet. So that was the uncertainty, and that was the difficult part to preach, knowing whether I'll make the right decision or not. But I did make the decision, and I thought in the beginning I'll just give myself a chance. It's not so much saying I'm leaving one career and moving to the next. It was more just, I'll see if I can bridge the gap. If I don't, I'll go back to my corporate job. But luckily, fortunately, I did keep improving, and I continued on the plan that I wanted to. There were a few hiccups along the way. Of course, it's running. It's never a straight line. But after time, I did manage to see a path and to see a place where I could make this into a career, and a successful career.
So how long after you started was that you decided, okay, maybe I can make a go of this?
It was at about 2.5 years after I started running.
Wow.
So at the time, I think my marathon time was maybe in the low 250s, or just round about there. It was fast, my improvement, but like I say, it wasn't quite at the level yet where someone would consider it as a professional career. But yeah, it was about 2 years. But like I say, the improvement was so rapid, I couldn't ignore it. It was also, everyone around me was so encouraging and so just supportive in my decision, and really almost pushing me more than I was pushing myself to take this decision, because they've been running for so many years and they know how it goes. And for them, it was never a fact of just every race improving and improving. You sort of reach your limit and try and stay at that level. But they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself from the beginning. So to have had that structure from the start was really, really special.
I think it's so interesting and inspiring, actually, because you say bridging the gap, you weren't quite at the professional level, but it's so hard when professional athletes get sponsored when they get there. So it's really hard to take that risk, because it's actually, if I do stop my corporate job, then I'm likely to improve and hopefully then get these sponsorships. But it is a risk, and there's almost like not that support of the in-between of actually, let's get these athletes who have the potential to then get them to the world stage. And luckily for you, it's obviously paid off. But
Yes.
I think it is a problem.
Luckily, it has paid off, and I could see the problem, and I can see even now, I'm sure so much talent gets lost along the line, because bridging that gap is not always easy. Saying to yourself, there's a year perhaps that I don't have financial support, I can't just keep doing this for years and years. That is really, really difficult. So it is a blessing that it ended in the way that it did. But I think also people notice, people take note, people are interested, people want to know the interesting story. It wasn't a face that they've seen from when I was 14 years old. It was a new face on the scene. So immediately there was a little bit of exposure around the path that I was on, which I think was very, very helpful for me. Again, to have had the end to the story is really, it's a lot of things that had to work out for me to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's such a leap of faith. How did you know you were going to enjoy it as a career? Because I had a similar kind of quite quick rise up, and then got to the stage where I was working in corporate law, and I was like, okay, I can't do both. I was actually really lucky that I got sponsored really quickly, and so I didn't have much of a gap, but I definitely had that feeling of, I'm taking a real leap into the unknown here, and running is my hobby. And that feeling of, okay, it's a very different beast doing it as your job, and am I going to enjoy it? And actually, to be honest, before I went pro, that was my biggest. I always said like I wouldn't want to be a professional runner because it's my hobby, it's my cut off from work. So did you know you were going to enjoy it?
It also went through my mind, the same motions and emotions that I guess went through your mind. I was worried about it at one stage, but, and I'm sure we'll get into this later on as well. Right in the beginning, I told myself, my first rule will be, if I'm not enjoying this, I'm stopping. If it gets to a time where I feel like running is not enjoyable for me, I will not run anymore. That's my first rule, and it's always been the rule that I fall back onto, even if when it goes a little bit not according to plan, or I have a bad day or a bad race. I always think to myself, there has to be something that was enjoyable for you during this day or during this run or in this week, and I've stuck to that rule. So I think it's important to constantly look for enjoyment in it as well. Running is tough. It's a difficult sport, and it will go up and down. But I think you have to be conscious looking for places that is actually really enjoyable, and just to look at it in the broad perspective as well. I always think, well, if it's a bad day, it's a bad day, but this still tops working corporate 100 times over. So I think having seen both worlds, there's always a little bit of perspective that I can add to just having one bad day, because that you can put behind you quickly. It doesn't override the big picture of how amazing the running is and the running environment and just being part of such an awesome sport. I think that will override any bad day that I have, or any questions whether I am doing this, I'm still enjoying what I'm doing.
That's so great. And it's so clear that you love it. You always have such a smile on your face, and even your race photos, you're just smiling your way through the race, which is just so lovely. But let's go on to Comrades, because I'm sure that's what you are best known for. You've won it now 3 times and hold both the record for the up and the down runs, which is really, really cool. But how do you train for a race like that? How does a race that's, 87K? How does that differ from marathon training, for example?
It's quite interesting, the Comrades training, the Comrades preparation. For me, I've done the marathon training, I've done short distance training, and then of course the ultra distance training. Actually, it's not that different to marathon training. Of course, there's a few things that you have to adjust, but training for the Comrades is still the same as marathon. I follow a set structure. I have my tempo work, I've got my speed work, and I've got my long runs that I try to hit every week. So it's still a similar sort of build. Of course, the intensity is the big thing that is different. Training for the Comrades, your pace, of course, is a lot slower than the marathon pace. So everything is just dialed back a little bit. For instance, if I do a tempo workout, I wouldn't try and hit my marathon pace. I would try and run at my Comrades pace instead, or slightly quicker, but for a much longer distance. The long runs are the same. You're doing a long run at the weekend, Saturday, Sunday. It's a long run. It needs to be easy, although I dial it just a little bit back, but I would go, instead of doing my longest run of 40 kilometers for the marathon, I would push it out to 50 kilometers for the Comrades. So you still follow a similar structure, similar program. And then also another big difference for me is the hills, because Comrades is a very hilly race. So many times I would either swap or mix my speed workouts with hill training as well, just to make sure that the legs are ready for those up and down hills. Whether it's an up run or a down run, there's uphill and downhill in both. So that's very, very important to make sure that you condition yourself for the route and for the profile. So, but in general, I can't say it's that much different. It's still the same amount of mileage, more or less, in a week that I would do for a marathon. So there's similarities, but there are a few differences.
What kind of mileage would you do?
For me, I've learned from the past, my peak mileage is at about what I try to reach for about a month, keep at for a month to 6 weeks, is at about 180 kilometers. So what's that, 110 miles? So that's, for me, it's like quite a sweet spot. I have gone a little bit over, or even a little bit less is okay for me, but that's sort of where I find is my sweet spot.
What I always find so interesting with training for these longer ultras is, you said your longest run's 50K, and that's like almost 40K less than the actual race. So how mentally do you know that you're okay to run that whole distance?
It is something that you have to get used to mentally, because you can't, for Comrades, you can't train the distance.
Yeah.
You just, it's impossible. You can do it, but it's not advisable, because it's just too fatiguing. So I always look at the real long distance, like the 100-miler runners. They don't train 80 miles for a 100-mile race. You can't do it. But it's just making sure that you build that base around your long run. So I would do a long run, but it's on top of a 160, 170, 180 kilometer week. It's that build up. And then also straight after, you can't take 6 days off after running 50 kilometers. You have to keep going. So I'm sure that sort of that chaining it all together is what helps. And the rest of it, you have to just know it's mental. It's you're not going to train your body physically for those last 30 kilometers. That's where your mental strength has to come in, and it does. It works every time. So it is possible. It's just getting used to it.
What goes through your head in those last 30K? Because, I mean, to me, the last 30K, I mean, I think the last 10K of a marathon is really tough. I cannot imagine the last 10K 3 times over.
Yeah, no, it is something definitely to get used to. I've got tools to get used to it, to get through it. I have a race plan. I have to hit the certain distances at a certain time. I plan it out beforehand, and in the same way, I've got a mental plan. So I even think about what I'm going to think about, and I write it down. And when I hit 10 kilometers, I think about what I told myself to think about. And as the kilometers go by, I always come back to my mental plan. And in the last 30 kilometers of the race, I make sure that I've got a strong plan. I think positive thoughts. I think mind over matter. I think about the training that I've done, and when I perhaps struggled in training but got through it. I think about the best training sessions I've done, and I just tell myself, I got through that, I can get through this. I've been here before, I can do it again. It's just that positive injection. And then I must say, on the Comrades, if either of you ever consider it, you will really notice the crowds carry you. It is an incredible feeling running that race, and people shouting for you. I get goosebumps just sitting here when I think about it. People are so passionate about that race. It is like a movement on Comrades Day. The country comes to a standstill, and people flock to the roads to come and support. And they bring their couches and their mattresses and their barbecues and their family galore, and they come and support. And it really does carry you. You feel like you out of your own body, and you're doing it for more than just yourself. And you just think of that finish line and know that how incredible it's going to feel, and also how it's going to impact the rest of your life and everyone around you is supporting you. So that sort of emotional support really is what carries you in the last 30 kilometers.
I think it's definitely on both of our lists to do.
It sounds so cool. But I think that's such a helpful tip about planning what you're going to think about. And we've spoken about it, because I do exactly the same. I think you do, Steph. You can't let your mind kind of do its own thing in those last stages, because you're going to be, it's the end of a long race. You're going to be struggling. So I think it is so crucial to have that plan. Do you work on your mental aspects kind of actively? Do you have a sports psychologist? What do you do for that?
Until now, I've not worked with a sports psychologist, but I don't say there's no room for it. Honestly, the mental side of running is so important, and it's something that everyone should actively be working on, whether you are doing it as a profession or just for social reasons. That mental side is very important. I always think that running, you have to make it personal to you. You have to find a deeper meaning for doing it, and that sort of meaning is what gets you through the race. But what I've also learned in my own experience is to make sure that you know your reason before you start the race, because you never know when you're going to really need it. I've got a great example of running the Olympics last year, and I struggled so much in that race, and I didn't expect struggling. I thought I'm fit, I thought I'm ready, I thought, being at the Olympics is more than enough reason to get me through. But when I started struggling, I realized that I was really searching for a deeper personal meaning why I need to continue pushing myself so hard. And I realized I didn't really have a more personal meaning, or I didn't think about it beforehand. And I was there thinking, how can running the Olympics not be enough for me right now? But it wasn't, because I was missing that personal connection. And that is what I think is very, very important, and what a lot of runners miss out on, is to think about it before you start the race, before you actually think you need it. So it is something that I work on. I use a lot of tools to make sure that I'm mentally strong for a race beforehand. And I use visualization. I use anything that I think is good for a positive mindset to get me through the races.
Yeah, I think that's such a good tip, because it's so true. When you go through the bad patch in a race, if you haven't prepared before what to think about, those negative thoughts just take over, and it's so hard to get out of it. So yeah, I think it's a really important tip. But clearly you're very mentally strong anyway. And is it that, or is it physically, or is it both? What sets you apart from everyone else in Comrades, Two Oceans? You're unbeatable at the moment. So what is it about you that sets you apart?
It's difficult to say because it's me, so I don't know what other people feel, but I do think that it's a combination of a lot of reasons why I've been successful in the ultra races, or in my career as an athlete. Perhaps I've learned a lot of lessons along the way when I was growing up without even knowing that it was going to one day benefit my running. The way I grew up, the way I was taught from very, very young age that you need to work hard and work for yourself to make your own life a success was definitely something that was so ingrained in me that I've never had to think about it. I've never had a problem with working hard. I've never had a problem with pushing myself really hard to work towards the goal that I wanted. And then also I think most athletes, all athletes probably have that genetic, just natural genetics that is definitely helpful. I think what is very beneficial for me is the fact I can run the marathon. I've competed in the marathon in 2 Olympics. I had the national record for the marathon for South Africa for a while. So I've managed to get my marathon time right down, and that already is a big benefit for me when I run the Comrades. I know when I line up at the Comrades, my pure marathon time, 42.2, is already much faster than most competitors. And no disrespect to the competitors, I mean, it's a really, really strong field of athletes every single year, but I do think that it's very beneficial for me. When it comes to the longer distances, I know I can dial it back and run at a very comfortable pace, whereas for perhaps other athletes it's not feeling that comfortable, and they will expend too much energy in the beginning trying to run at a pace that feels more comfortable for me. So that fact that I've just focused on the marathon a lot of times, and almost every year I allow myself a period of time to focus on getting faster, making sure that higher intensity feels a little bit easier for me. And then just everything else, I guess, that comes together, making sure that my training is right, not making the same mistakes year on year, learning from my own mistakes, learning from others. I think it's a lot of aspects that come together, but none of it will be possible without that pure enjoyment for it. I think that is the top ingredient and should be on every athlete's list, making sure that you truly love what you do, and the rest comes naturally, because if you love what you do, you will do, without thinking about it, everything to make it work for you, and that has always been the golden key for me in running.
I would so agree with that, because as you said earlier, it is a tough sport. Like, you've got to push your body really hard. And I don't know how people do it if they don't enjoy it.
Yeah,
Like,
same.
how do you get through those tough training sessions if you can't look back and like think, oh, actually, I'm really lucky to do this. And even if I have a bad day, it's still a pretty good day.
Still better than the alternative.
It's so powerful. What comes more naturally to you between the ultra and the marathon? Because obviously, I mean, you're so talented at both of them, but they are quite different distances.
I think if it's just based on pure natural, whatever comes natural, I would 100% say it's the longer the better for me. I've never find it difficult to run long. I would run long runs every day if it's up to me. So that sort of endurance side of it is definitely what comes more natural for me. I think I'm also quite fortunate in how I recover. I never feel as fatigued after a really long run as I would after a really, really hard speed session. So that to me comes natural. And it's definitely something I can use to become stronger. But I know the importance of the shorter distance speed intensity. I know the importance of it, so I don't leave it out. I do incorporate it, but natural, 100%, the longer the better for me.
And you spoke about recovery there. So Rose and I highlighted how last year you had, well, for mere mortals, seems like a crazy, crazy year. So you won 2 Oceans in April, you won Comrades, and then the Olympics, and then only a few months later, Valencia Marathon. How do you approach recovery after such big races? Because it wasn't like you were going into any of those just to run easy, you know, they were all big races for you. So how do you recover from those?
Yeah, the recovery is obviously, it's a very, very important point. I think also coming back to just me growing up as a kid, my lead up to before I was an athlete, I think maybe there was a few clues that would explain how I recover now as an athlete. I can remember as a kid, I was never sick. I never had any of the child measles or chicken pox. I never got, like, touch wood, but I never got sick. I never broke a bone. I've never broken a bone. I think in hockey I broke a finger, but just the ball really smashed my finger really hard. But I've always had a really good immune system. I've had an ability to recover really, really quickly. So that is definitely something that's helped me. But I do also put a lot of focus into it. I don't, if I feel like I need to rest, I rest. If I feel like something is niggly, I opt for cross training before this becomes a big issue. I know the importance of it. I could rather skip a day before I have to take 2 weeks off. One run is never as important as 2 weeks of training. So I always keep that recovery in mind. But also I'm still learning. Every year is a different challenge for me. I knew last year would be quite a big year. I've done the 2 Oceans and the Comrades, which is 2 months apart year on year. And I am quite confident that I've now figured out how quickly I can recover and start training again. Last year was a huge challenge for me because it actually just meant that I would be doing 3 races consecutively without huge breaks. And unfortunately, I didn't get the results that I wanted in the latter part of the year. So it just means that I'm still learning myself as well. I'm always pushing myself to the limit. I love the challenge. I think if you are in a position to do something really difficult, you should never say no to it. Take the challenge with both hands. Challenge yourself. That's what keeps the human race alive, and that's what keeps us evolving, and that's what inspires others. And if it means that you fail sometimes, or not even fail, just come short of the goals that you set out, that's also okay. It's a challenge, it's a lesson, and it's something that I'm taking on into the future. So last year was a lot. I can 100% admit that, and I've taken the lessons that I've learned there, and I'm applying it to this year. And maybe I will try and do 3 races in a row again and try and do better. But for now, I've learned that I need a break after doing 2 races, and that lesson is what I'm taking on into the new year.
I love that mindset of just, it's go for it, basically.
Yeah.
And you're always going to win, because if you don't achieve the goals that you quite set out to achieve, you've learned a lot from it. And I actually, to be honest, I actually think I learned so much more from the times when I don't quite hit my goals than when it all goes swimmingly well. And even though it's like disappointing at the time, I think you do come back stronger, and you do become a better athlete through it. So I think such a good mindset to have. What you mentioned, obviously you mentioned about your recovery, and that kind of seems to be quite a non-negotiable for you in terms of really listening to your body. But do you have any other real like non-negotiables for your training?
Yes, I do. I have got other non-negotiables. Some of them are more meaningful than others. Some of them are maybe silly, but some non-negotiables I have in training is I am never allowed to start at a point higher than where I finish my training. So the start point and the finish point need to be at the same point, basically.
Okay.
So I can never do an overall downhill run.
But what if you're training for a Comrades Down run?
No, the rule applies.
Please
If
don't
I
tell
wanna
me you
do-
like run back up at Comrades to make sure you finish higher.
No, but I'll keep going so that I'm never in a negative, doing more down runs than up runs.
Okay.
So that's just a silly rule. But other non-negotiables for me is, of course, like I said earlier, there has to be, doesn't matter how hard the run is or how hard the workout is, there always has to be something that I enjoyed. So even if it's the coffee after or whatever, I have to think of something that I really loved about the run.
I love that, because a lot of what you said is just kind of stuff that keeps you happy.
Yes.
And rather than it being really strict, like regimented physical training, it's actually a lot of your philosophy is just making sure you're training happy and enjoying it. And that's what's getting you the results.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not always enjoyable. I will admit it. Like we said earlier, training is tough. It takes sometimes all of you and sometimes more than what you think you can give. But to find those little moments and to always just make sure that you keep your focus on what you are actually doing here. If it's a race that is small to you and you didn't taper before that, and you're not planning to recover after, don't be too hard on yourself if the results weren't like mind-blowing. But if you're preparing for a big race 2 months later, keep your eyes on that, keep your eyes focused on that. And another thing that's also very important to me is to remember that running is not just about yourself. It's a individual sport. It's just you and the road out there, but it can literally uplift people around you that you've never even met, that you might never even meet in your life. People always look for inspiration, and people look for at others and at peers to see how they get through difficult things to enrich their lives, and they find true inspiration from that. And I get to learn that so much more off the road than on the road. So it's just to always keep in mind that there's a much bigger picture, and the actions that you do doesn't go unnoticed. The actions carry spread out a long way, and it might not return back to you, but knowing that there's actions that can help others in so many ways in their own lives is really what also keeps me going.
I love that. And I mean, we can see that just from running with you and how many people recognize you. And, you know, Steph was actually made a really good point earlier of, I can imagine after Beta Bear, it was pretty crazy for you, but you just kept this amazing smile on your face and was so gracious to everyone who greeted you. And Steph's point was that for them, it's their first interaction with you. You know, you've had a million in about the space of 10 minutes, but to them, it's, you know, that moment that they will remember, and they might be getting into running or, you know, working their way up to Comrades or whatever it is, but hugely inspired by just, you know, having said hello.
That's absolutely true. And I must also say, I really remembered your words as well when you said, you must remember it's their first interaction with you. It doesn't matter how many selfies you've taken today. For them, it's the first time. And this 5 seconds is what they are going to remember. So it is very, very important. But it's actually so special. I mean, sometimes I just think, how on earth did my life change? And it just makes it all so worthwhile. You just sometimes have this moment where I think, where did this all come from, or how did this all happen? And I know South Africans in general are so passionate about sports. I mean, when it comes to rugby and when it comes to the Springboks, and if any of them walk in the street or in a shop, people just go nuts. And to have a little bit of that in our sport, in running, it's so, so special. And people who aren't even runners, they would come up and say something. They saw me on Comrades and they cheered for me. It's so special. And for a country like South Africa, I think it's really, really important to have that, because sport really does bring us together. There's a lot that goes wrong. There's things that's not right. It doesn't matter when it comes to sport. When it comes to sport, we are behind each other and we support each other. And to have been in the sports scene, in the running scene for quite a few years now, I think has also helped, because it's that longevity or that continuity that people see. They remember they saw me in 2019 and, oh, it's the same Gerda. We remember we supported her last year. We want to see her again. And, oh, yes, she is at the local running club or the local race. I think for people to have that sort of long-term connection now, and to just be able to relate to me, it's really special. And sometimes I also feel like it's not me. It feels like, I don't know, it feels bigger than me. It's not something that I take too personally, as in, I'm special or anything like that. I just see it as there was actually a need or a niche for this person to come in and to show people that running is amazing. It can change your life. It can make you friends. It connects you to the community. And above all, it's a healthy way of spending your time. So yeah, I'm really feeling privileged to be in this position, and I will never ever take all the support for granted.
I think a lot of it as well is that message of you've just gone and followed a dream. You had the corporate job and it took a big leap of faith to get there, but you found something that you absolutely loved and just went for it. And I think a lot of people find that hugely inspirational, but it's also what a lot of people would want to do.
Absolutely, yes. And one thing that also, when you say that, which reminds me of another point, is when I started running, it was all the experts saying that I'm not doing it correctly. I'm taking on the ultras way before I should. I'm too young to do this. I'm too this to do that. There was so much advice. People were telling me that my career would be short. I will never keep going. It was so many people having so many opinions. And in the beginning, it rattled me a little bit, because what do I know? I mean, I didn't have years and years of knowledge. But I learned very quickly that you just have to follow your passion. You have to just follow your logic and make out what it is that you enjoy. And make sure, when you find that, to do the best you possibly can in that area. Running is so wide. There's so many alleys that you can go on. And to listen to others' opinion is not going to get you anywhere. You have to find what's your passion and make the most of that. And that's also what's helped me. So I think that's also always the message that I want to carry out to runners is you can run the way you want to run. You can choose what you want to do. If everyone is running a marathon, but you enjoy 5Ks, go for it. Like, make the best of that. Make that your area and find people that you can relate to and enjoy it in the way that you want to do it. So that is also something that I always try to carry over to people, is you don't have to follow what the experts say, or you don't have to follow what other people think you should do. Find your own way, find your own passion and make the most of that.
Yeah, such a great message. And with all the attention that you get, does it make you feel pressure? So you've had a huge 2024. Going into 2025, do you feel pressure to improve on your performances? How do you deal with that attention and the pressure that comes with it?
There's always a level of pressure, I guess, for anyone in the professional running. It's running. It's highly, highly competitive. So it will always come with pressure. But I try not for it not to faze me. I always look at pressure as it's people wanting me to do well. It's support more than pressure. That's how I process it in my mind anyway. I put pressure on myself because as an individual and as an athlete, I want to see improvement and I want to know that I've pushed myself as much as I could and I got the most out of my running and out of my career, because as you all know, your running career is not that long in the broad spectrum. So I always put that pressure on myself, of course. But the rest of it that comes from external places, like, I don't know, competitors, sponsors, supporters, I don't look at it as pressure. I look at it as they want me to do really, really well, and it might appear like pressure, but actually it's nothing other than just support.
So when you stand on that start line of Comrades and, you know, everyone knows you and you've won it 3 times already, like, how do you process that and, I guess, stay calm?
Well, I can assure you my legs are shaking like mad when I stand there. It does feel like a little bit of a pinnacle moment where everything comes together. But again, I just say to myself, this is my day. People are here. They've got their posters, they've got their banners. They want to see me do well. And I put pressure on myself, but that's just a matter of managing it, and a matter of having that self-confidence to stand there with confidence, knowing that I've done the hard work. I've done everything I could in preparation, whether that meant dialing it back or doing more than last year. I've done the best of my ability to stand here with confidence and to just let that carry me forward. And like I say, for the rest of it, anything else that feels like pressure, I just process as support. People wanting me to do well because I did well before and they want me to do it again, and perhaps waiting for me to, at the finish line, to sign their daughter's t-shirt or something inspirational. That's just how I process it in my mind.
So what are your goals for this year then?
My goals for this year is quite clear for me. I am going to run the 2 Oceans and the Comrades again. And of course, I want to defend my titles in both those races. It's not even, I don't even have to think about it for a second. I know for sure that's the goals for the first half of the year, which is coming around really quickly. So that's my first goal. My second goal, that's the goal for the first half of the year. Then on another note, I've got another goal this year. I'm starting a new company, so we really want to see that come off the ground. It's almost there, so we're really, really excited for that. And then in terms of running performance, I would also love to do another marathon at the end of the year. I haven't fully decided which one yet, but I've got a little short list. So I would love to run the New York Marathon. I have done it 3 times, and I've always been in the high teens, 11th, 12th, 13th. I've never broken into the top 10. And in London Marathon, I was 7th. So I would really like to get a top 10 finish in the New York Marathon as well. But of course, it's always such a highlight for me to run on home soil. So there's also the Cape Town Marathon that I'm looking at. And then another iconic race that I've never been a part of and get asked and hassled so often and that I would really love to do is also the Soweto Marathon. So I'm still deciding on a marathon at the end of the year, but that's more or less the goals that I've set out.
Amazing. What's the company? Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, sure. We've developed and are developing an online running platform. So it will be all things running. We're going to have training programs that's free for anyone to follow. And just what my real goal and passion is to help runners understand running, help them to develop and to create and to build their own running in their own design. So what we want to do is teach runners the basics of running first. And again, like I said, not to just follow someone's advice and off you go and it might not be working for you, but to really try and understand running and try to make it fit into your own lifestyle and try to find your own balance. So we want to have a lot of information out there that is available for anyone to follow, but encourage people to design it in the way that works for them. So that's going to be the website. It's coming soon, maybe a few more weeks, but we're very, very excited for that.
That sounds awesome. That's such a cool idea. And as you said, there are so many different ways to train. Like, not even just choosing what distances to go for, but even if you're going for the same distance, there's so many different ways to get there. And I think that is a problem with like all the online plans that are just generic. It's like it could really work for some people and really not work for other people. And the people it doesn't, they kind of think, oh, well, I'm not good at running. Like,
Correct.
it's not working. I'm not good, and there's no other way to get there. So it's such a cool idea you're doing that.
I hope so. And the thing is just that balance, that life balance is really, really important. A program might be a perfect program for someone, but for someone else who's got time limitations, who's got family obligations, it's not always the best. So hopefully it will make a difference. Runners have got so many questions. Runners have got such a hunger to understand, and it's not easy to find information always. Maybe because there's just so much, so it sometimes just get overwhelming. You trying to look for something online, and all the answers are someone says this is right, but someone says it's the complete wrong answer. So yeah, that's our goal with it. That's our hope and dream with this platform. It's sometimes difficult to invest in people individually, to have enough time to help individuals. So we're trying to have lots of information that's just accessible to everyone.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
And what about for your career generally? Do you have some kind of big career goals that you really want to tick off?
I think I do have some career goals. Yes, I would love to still improve on my marathon time. The marathon for me has always been, I don't want to call it a side hustle, but in many ways it is. In 2020 and 2021, I didn't really have a choice. The ultras were all cancelled, and I had the odd race that I managed to get into, and I was just fully focused on the marathons, and I really could see it paying off. I managed to increase better my times on all the short distances, and in the marathon I ran really well in those years. Was 15th in the Olympics in Tokyo, 7th in London, so I could really see the benefit of that. But besides from those 2 years, the marathon has always been for me something that I try to fit in when I'm not training for the ultras, and I can't always expect miracles just trying to quickly transform into a marathon runner. But even so, I would still like to improve my marathon time. I feel like I still have a quicker time in me. So that is definitely a long-term career goal for me. And then, of course, to try and continue on the track that I'm on with the Comrades and the Two Oceans. I think that's also with the ultras. It's something that you can perhaps extend a little bit longer in your career. You can have, I don't know, it's my opinion, more years competing at a high level at the ultras. And then for a longer term, I would love to compete in the Ultra Trail Mont Blanc. So that's also something that's definitely on my list, but maybe just a little bit further down the line.
Have you done much trail racing at all?
Not at all, no. I've not done much trail racing. I do run on the trails a little bit, but I've not done many trail races at all. So hopefully when I've ticked all the boxes with the road running, I'll still have a few more years to be competitive on the trails.
Yeah, I'm sure you'd be great at it. Do you have any time goals for Comrades? So this year's the down run, is it? Yeah. So I assume you're trying to break your record again. Do you have any goals in terms of specific time, or just break the record?
Yes, I do. This year is a little bit of a tricky year, although I can't call it tricky. The reason I'm saying it's tricky is 2 years ago with the previous down round, the route was quite a lot shorter than historic routes. And every year can differ a little bit. It's whether it's roadworks, it depends on the finish line, and the start line is always the same, but the route does change a little bit. So it's not a set distance every year. And 2 years ago, the route was quite short. So this
quite
year,
short.
Yeah, well, short. Everyone said it's short. It's like still 87 instead of 89. But so this year it's more towards the traditional length of the route, which means it's about a mile longer than 2 years ago. Wow. So it will mean that I need to run basically a 5-minute or so personal best in order to break the record. So it's going to take a lot, but it is still my goal. So I'm going to do my utmost best to get to that shape, to be able to do that. So certainly I would love to break that record again, and to make sure that it is cemented into the history.
That is so great. And I think, everything you said has just been very inspirational, and just yeah, following your path, doing what makes you happy. It's just so important. And everyone can relate to that and find success through that. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing everything today. The final question that we ask all our guests is, what is your high five me moment? So a moment in your career, can be running related, it could be something else, that you would give yourself a massive high five.
Oh my word. That's something that I have to think about.
I feel like there are too many.
Shame. No, I think perhaps it was when I ran the 2 Oceans in 2018. And I was by no means, well, I was one of the names that was mentioned that year, but I was by no means the standout favorite to win the race. And I remember at the start of the race, or the days leading up to the race, I've never won a race anything close to that size in my short career that I had until then. And I remember myself and my husband was talking about the race beforehand, and he said to me, you've got a chance here. You're still improving. The other ladies are really, really strong, but you are being mentioned and they are saying that you've got a chance. So just go for it. And remember, when you get to the top of the second hill, which is called Constantia Neck, as you know, if you're in the lead there, you must just know the race is yours, because you can run downhill strong, and you mustn't look back when you're at the top there and you're in the lead, and just go for it, because then you can win the race. And the race went on, and I wasn't in the lead until literally at the top of Constantia Neck. I took the lead, and I just remembered those words. But I was really, really tired at that point. It was like I was pushing myself way above the limit. And anyway, I got to the top and I said to myself, I agreed that if I'm in the lead at the top of this hill, I will run down as hard as I can to win the race. And I did. And I won the race. And that moment to me was something that really changed my mindset. For the first time, I thought of myself as someone who can win and someone who can actually, inspire. And I did. And that moment changed a lot for me. So I think that moment was definitely a high five moment.
Wow, that's awesome. I actually got goosebumps when you said that at the top of Constantia Neck, and you came in the lead. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll never forget that moment. And I've been on that hill many times after that, but I always remember that specific race.
We'll keep that in mind this year when you're doing it as well, because I'm sure that will power you on.
Hopefully,
Can't
fingers
wait
crossed.
To watch. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been just amazing to chat, and your enthusiasm and just positivity is so infectious. So no doubt all our listeners will think the same too. It's just the uplifting episode that all the British listeners who are there in the cold and struggling to get out will need. So thank you so much, Gerda.
No, thank you for having me on the show, and all the best also to both of you. I know you both have got huge goals for the year, so I'm cheering for you and can't wait to see what you produce.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us, 5 Miles Easy.
See you next time.